Welcome to Running for Real, a global community with a shared love and curiosity for running. Together we reconnect with the reasons why we love to run and discover ways it helps us become better people. Whether it's the quiet moments of a morning run while the rest of the world still sleeps, or befriending the strangers next to you at the start line of a race. We are here to connect with others who see running as the common thread that weaves our lives together. Come join me, Tina Muir, as I talk with people from all walks of life, united by a love of running. Hello, my friends. Welcome to another episode of the Running for Real podcast. Thank you for joining me today. I'm excited that you are here. If this is your 289th episode, welcome back. And if this is your first episode, welcome to the show. I hope you enjoy this and continue to stay on with us. Now, today I'm excited to introduce you to a guest that I've been following along with for quite a while now, but recently came into contact with while I was doing research for the book I am writing with Zoe Rome, which comes out later this fall, entitled Becoming a Sustainable Runner. Kind of perfect if you know me. That is something I'm very passionate about. And in the research for a chapter on giving back to the community, Zoe recommended my guest today as someone who would really bring a lot of fun to the chapter and just give some really good insights. And so I was excited to connect with Yassine Diboun, who routinely places near the top at some of the most difficult ultramarathons in the world and in America. He finished third at the 2016 Hurt 100-mile race with a finishing time of 22:39. When a race has a name like Hurt, that gives you a lot of insight, huh? I don't think I would be able to handle that. He's also had top 10 finishes at the 2013 Western States 100. And in 2015, he was one of 5 American runners who represented the USA at the IAU World Trail Championships, which is pretty cool. So beyond that, we get to talk a little bit about that today, but we went deeper. We talked a little bit about volunteering and why it is so important that volunteers make things fun, make things enjoyable, make things just a bright spot for people who are in races. And it was a really great conversation about that. We also talked about his recovery. We talk about finding that balance between being tough, but also knowing when to stop, when to step away, when to keep things fun. It was a really insightful conversation for me and one that I definitely needed to hear going into my 50K training later this year. So I am just going to take a moment to thank one of our sponsors and we'll be right to this episode with Yassine Diboun. Thank you to Tracksmith for sponsoring this episode of the Running for Real podcast. Tracksmith is an independent running brand fueled by a deep love of the sport. We know that together the running community has the power to drive positive change, and that inspired Tracksmith to rethink how they work with people like myself and others to show up for others. We at Running for Real and at Tracksmith are proud to support Runners for Public Lands. Give back to this organisation with every purchase you make through Tracksmith. So 5% of all sales made by you Running for Real listeners will go to support Runners for Public Lands, which is a 501c3 non-profit environmental organisation that is dedicated to environmental justice, advocacy and conservation. So you, my friends, if you use code TINA15, you will receive free shipping and get that 5% of sales going to Runners for Public Lands. If you go to tracksmith.com/collections/running-for-real, you can go see some of my favorite items on there. I know that can be a bit of a mouthful to say, and it's a lot harder to remember. So you can also just go to the show notes and there will be a link directly there to go see some of my favorites and also to get that code automatically added in. However, you can also use code TINA15 to go do that automatically. We are also looking at what events we will be doing with Tracksmith for the Boston Marathon, so stay tuned. Go sign up for the Running for Real newsletter if you haven't already, so we can update you on what events we will be doing with Tracksmith at Boston. And I want to thank Tracksmith for being a loyal friend, for supporting us, for allowing us to chase our dreams and go do some of the things we've been able to do in the community. We wouldn't have been able to do it without Tracksmith. So thank you once again to Tracksmith. Go check out some of the items that I love. The Brighton base, I'm wearing it constantly right now, as with the Alston tights. I'm loving those in the winter, and the session pants are my go-to day-to-day apparel. Thank you so much to Tracksmith. Yassine, I am so excited to welcome you to the Running for Real podcast. Thank you for joining me today.
Thank you for having me as a guest, Tina. It's good to be here.
Yeah, it's going to be fun. And I want to thank my co-author, Zoe Rome, for introducing me to you, connecting me to you, and allowing me to I've been following along quietly for a while, and it's really exciting now to actually be able to talk to you. And I think I've got some interesting and hopefully unique conversation points, as I know you've been in a lot of media places over the years. So I want to begin by, I mentioned Zoe connected us, and yes. You provided some quotes for the book I'm writing with Zoe, Becoming a Sustainable Runner. And she told me that you're kind of widely known in the Pacific Northwest. And one of the things that you're known for is the fun that you bring to volunteering. Now, that's not something that people typically would say to me someone is known for, especially when they are a very competitive athlete themselves and someone who has achieved a lot. Like you don't typically hear those things together. So while it's quite actually a funny statement to hear, to say someone brings fun to volunteering when that should be something that doesn't need to be said, why do you think that is something that stands out with you? Why do you think it's important for for volunteering to be fun, for stations where people go through to be fun?
Well, first off, like I said, thank you so much. And Zoe is a great person, and I love what she is doing in the world, and you as well. And little fun fact is that Zoe is one of the only people that have seen me shave my head with a razor. And it's a random thing, but we were in Europe. We were in Europe together at UTMB, and she was helping out with the story from Trail Runner, and we were talking about like pre-race rituals. And one of my pre-race rituals is I like to get a nice, clean, smooth shave on my head. So she's like, "Can we get some photos of this?" And the next thing you know, I'm standing in the bathroom with shaving cream on my head, shaving my head with Zoe in there watching. So, yes, I have raced in Europe several times, and this leads me into your question. And when I was racing in Europe, a lot of these mountain races, you would come through the aid stations, and it would be all this energy, people cheering, and it wasn't just people handing out paper cups of water, right? And they were providing this experience, and it was something that almost got like imprinted in my mind as I left that event, and as I look back on that event in my mind, those are the things I remember. So I, over the last decade or so, as we have built our business here in the Pacific Northwest that is around coaching and training, we sponsor a lot of races. We try to bring a lot of that same energy and into the local races here in the Oregon Pacific Northwest area. So what does that look like? Well, oftentimes people sign up to volunteer with us, and we send them an email stating that, all right, this is not your normal aid station where we're just handing out cups of water and filling people's bottles and, giving them some snacks. We're providing an experience that they're always going to remember. I mean, for a lot of people, this is a lifetime achievement, really, is doing these trail races or ultra marathons, it's a big deal, even though sometimes in our circles, we're doing races all the time, and, a 50K is a short race for us, right?
Not for me. That's I'm working up to it.
No, for a lot of people, it's a lifetime achievement, and it's something to be very proud of. And so we want to add to that experience. And I've seen a lot of people over the years, and, they say, "Oh, you're from Oregon. Oh, I did this race, the Gorge Waterfalls 100K one year." And I said, "Oh, I was there." And I said, "Do you remember the Grateful Dead aid station?" And, "Yeah, I remember that." You know what I mean? And so I've had many times people I've met at races years later and I say, "Oh, do you remember the cowboy aid station?" And they're like, "Yeah." I said, "That was me," you know? And so they're just like, "You guys were amazing." So those are the kind of things that, you know, I also just like to bring some levity to these races where, you know, sometimes people can get so in their head and almost kind of forget that our lives are so good that we have to remember like what we're doing out here, right? We're paying money to put ourselves in these situations, right? Because our lives are that good. So by doing what we do, it actually adds this element of levity, and it's a reminder, like, part of this is to have fun too.
Oh, there's so many questions I want to come from that, but I'm going to ask the one that I'm probably going to forget first, and then I'll go into the ones that came up while you're speaking. First is, you just said about paying, you know, our lives are so comfortable. We've talked about this before, like that running, especially those really challenging things, help us to feel alive, that we seek those moments of discomfort because that's what we know as humans. It's just in the last 100 or so years, we've kind of forgotten that. But how do you find the balance there between, is it that you recognize those moments when you're not at an aid station, you're probably in those moments of suffering or struggling or discomfort, and so you want to bring some, like you said, lightness or like lifting weight off during those moments? But how do you find the balance between letting people experience those lows and the real challenge, and also, as you said, remind yourself that you are paying to do this, and it is supposed to be an enjoyable experience.
I mean, that's a great question, because, you know, I think part of the reason why I have fallen in love with this sport too is because it's very symbolic and metaphorical for life too. And also for the life that I've been living over the last 17 years. Prior to me getting clean and sober, I was never really having this authentic experience in life, because it was always, my mind was always altered. It's like, oh, you want to celebrate, let's drink. And you want to grieve and mourn, let's drink. Or, you know, I always joke that, you know, alcohol and drugs were the ketchup of life. You know, you put ketchup on everything, right? And that's what it was for me. But, you know, since 2004, I feel like I experience life on life's terms. I experience the good times, the rough times, the sad times, the very painful times. You know, all emotions. And I feel like that's what it's like in an ultra too, is to embrace those moments, to embrace those low points. And, you know, we do remind people, we've had people at our aid stations that have broken down crying at our aid station, and just, you know, literally just like voicing that, you know, I don't think I can do this. And I bit off too much. I can, you know, that I can chew. And, you know, and we've had to really talk them through, like, these are the low points of ultras. Like, these are the moments that you have to work through. And oftentimes they didn't eat enough food. So we sit them down and get them a plate of food. And more often than not, after they eat some food and gather themselves, they're able to work through those really low points. And so, yeah, so much of it is just embracing all of the emotions and experiencing it authentically.
I definitely want to dive into that a little bit later in the interview when we're talking about, you know, you mentioned your sobriety, how that ties into this. But just a few other questions related to the volunteering. You said that it struck you when you were in Europe about seeing how the energy was. Had you not seen that here in the US? Like, what do you think is different? Because in my experience, people in the US are very like, woohoo, compared to Europe. So it would almost, I'd expect it to be like flipped.
Yeah, no, I think, you know, I've definitely had many races where I've experienced that. And a lot of the races in our country are much smaller too, just based on like permits and things like that. And so a lot of these races that I've done, like UTMB and whatnot, they're thousands of runners, and they're just huge parties that you're coming through. So I think that's part of it. But more importantly, I just was like, you know, I'm always about creating the fellowship that you crave. So it's just like, let's have a fun. Let's make this a party, right? And like those are the things that are those lasting impressions on people. And and it's also very fun for us as volunteers, like hanging out and listening to music and having, glow in the dark stuff and night and music pumping and dancing and just adding to that experience for folks. And it makes the time go by so quickly. And like I said in the quote, it's like, what I love to do is be out in nature with people. I'm a very extroverted type of person. So like to see all these people coming through and seeing friends and seeing people participate in the sport that I love so much, and hanging out on the Pacific Crest Trail, for example, all weekend, where I can also, take a break, go for a run, go swimming. I have my camper van that I often bring to these races. So it's just very much in line with my things that I like to do. And it's connecting with nature and connecting with people, oftentimes away from technology.
Yes, absolutely. And we all know we need a little more of that time.
Oh, totally. Yeah.
So you said, going back to this email that you said you send out, so you send this email out to someone who's volunteering, and what, you pick a theme for the race, and you said about use the Grateful Dead one and use the cowboy one as examples. What does that entail, and what are you telling these volunteers?
Yeah, so essentially I say, thank you for signing up to volunteer with us. Our aid stations, as you may know, are more than just handing out, gel packets, and we're providing an experience. And every aid station, we have a different theme. This weekend, the theme is, astronauts, or,
Who picks these themes?
I do, usually.
You do? Okay.
Yes.
Is it just something you see randomly that comes to mind, or do you have an ongoing list?
Sometimes there's a couple races that they are constant, like the same theme. For example, there's a place in Oregon, near Bend, Oregon, called Smith Rock. And so for that one, every May, we call it the Smith Rocks aid station. And so we're big hair rock stars. Yes. And so that one is listening to Guns N' Roses and that kind of music all day. Big hair, wigs, ripped jeans, rock stars. And then, we have another one, which I mentioned, the astronauts. We're on the north end of Mount St. Helens. And so it's a very, very much looks like a moonscape out there on the north end of the volcano. So we bought these astronaut costumes. And it's just people come around the mountain and all of a sudden they see these astronauts. It's just
they're like, am I hallucinating?
Yes, absolutely. People have said that. It's, they're like, am I really seeing this right now? Are there's astronauts out here in white suits handing me water? So yeah, I just let them know, beforehand, we're about to have a party. We're about to provide this experience for people. This, be prepared to have fun, come correct too. If you just show up with a little bandana for our cowboy, theme, I'm going to let you hear about it. I'm going to be like, come on, where's your cowboy hat? Where's your, where are your jeans or, So, and I usually have extra costumes just in case people do forget or come a little light. I have my garage is quite, cool. My wife is just she's like, you're crazy. It's really interesting because she's more introverted and she would enjoy just staying in the dark bedroom reading her book. And she's like, you would love to just go dress up in costume all Saturday and be out there dancing,
But it's probably good for her as well, right? Because it gets your energy out. So then you come back and you're on a normal level with her, or on a level with her, I should say. Yeah. Well, that's fun. Okay. Well, I just wanted to dig into that because I think that's really fun. And I hope people listening, if they're involved with races, maybe can take some of that energy and think of a way to apply it to their own races or ways that they volunteer or supporting friends. And you've said how powerful it can be, and you've obviously experienced that yourself.
Yes.
Being in races what is a memorable one that comes to mind to you for that of like a memorable aid station?
I've had so many people help me over the years at various different races while they're dressed in like crazy costumes. And, there have definitely been times where I've not really been in the mood, and you got somebody disco dancing right next to me and some crazy. So I realize, but I always kind of deep down appreciate the vibe. I appreciate the intention behind it.
Mm-hmm.
And, I particularly remember like Western States, for example, coming through and having people in the short jean shorts and dancing. And, one time I came through and there was a guy dressed up in like a chicken suit, like a huge chicken suit. It's like, how can you not smile and give a high five to a huge chicken, at mile 7,
That's fun. I'm doing my I hope I'm doing my first 50K in May. So awesome. I'm hoping that I can. I was signed up to do the Golden Gate Classic last year, but we got unfortunately my family got COVID the day before we were leaving, so that bummer. Didn't happen. So this is take 2. So we'll see what happens.
Event?
No, the Bryce Canyon something. Is it called the Bryce Canyon? Yeah, Bryce Canyon 50K. It's in the Bryce Canyon. That's all I know. So, but it's funny actually. I only realized, or only put it together a few weeks ago that I'm going to be at altitude, and I don't live at altitude, so I didn't think about that part, and I didn't think about the fact that the temperature is going to swing probably from like freezing to very hot throughout the day. So I've got some preparations to do. So.
Well, good luck. I'm actually going out. I'm going out to Zion, which is right next to Bryce, and that's my next big race too in April.
Oh, awesome! That's cool. Yeah, that I mean, I've had Zion Park. It's stunning. So
same with Bryce too.
Mm-hmm. So yeah, I'm hoping we can. My family's going to be with me. I'm hoping we can make a little trip over there as well.
Nice.
Okay, so moving on back, I want to bring this back to you.
Yeah.
Obviously, you've mentioned about the importance of fun within running. Have you always understood that point? Has that been something tied to your running from the beginning? We all know that it's not easy to keep fun in there all the time when you're struggling, as you said about someone disco dancing around you. Sometimes we're not in the mood, but has that always been a fundamental piece of your running?
I've always, in general, as just a human being, tried to keep some sort of element of fun in my life, regardless of what I'm doing. But I would say earlier in my running career, as I started having more successes, I started becoming more competitive. Mm-hmm. And I think the older that I've gotten, I realized that, for me, it's just, there's more to trying to clock the fastest times to me. And, by doing these aid stations, it allows me to give back to the sport that I love so much, but it also just, really allows me to give my time and to have an enjoyable experience and laugh a lot. I mean, we all know that laughing is great for your health. Mm-hmm. And there are often times where we are just being so silly for hours on end. And it's like, it kind of, sometimes it doesn't make sense to people. Like, so you're not getting paid to stand out there all day. And I think that's the society we live in nowadays, is like everything is monetized.
Transactions, yeah.
Exactly. And everything's monetized. And it's like, well, why are you spending it's such a time commitment to be out there for all day? Like, what are you getting from it? And that's essentially, that's what like ultra running is. It's not about the material things that you receive from the sport. It's the intrinsic rewards that you get. And that is something I speak with schools and kids. I work with a lot of kids, and I try to teach them about what you want to do in life. And, don't choose a career based on how much money it makes. Because, I've I have a lot of friends that are in careers that they don't really like at all, but they went down that road because it was a good job outlook, a good salary projection, But then they've, accumulated all this like debt for schooling and higher education, and they feel kind of trapped into this area that they don't really enjoy. So, I've had kids ask me what my job is, and then I tell them, and they're like, "Oh, cool! Like, does that make a lot of money?" And that's when I start telling them it's not all about the money. So
it can be hard, though. I think. Our society definitely pushes towards like more money equals more happiness, even though I feel like at this point, everyone has come across or heard about that study that says after a certain point, it levels off. Like I think that point is it's like 70,000 a year or something, dollars. It's not anything like, $500,000. But which I know 70,000 a year is still quite a lot. But yeah, we push that. And then I also feel like with that, same thing. I've got many friends who started, college for a degree because it made good money and they didn't enjoy it even then, but they kept going. And there's that like ego part of it of I can't back out now. Like I'm too invested in this. I've given too much to this. I can't switch now. And it always saddened me to think about, kind of living for the weekend, especially. And you must have known this from, when you were struggling before you got sober about, when it's just living, as you said, about partying, struggling through the week to get to the end of the day so you can have a glass of wine, struggling through the week to get to the weekend so that you can have 2 days off. Like that seems backwards. And so how can we get more people to, not everyone is going to be able to live a life like you or I in the roles that we do, but how can we all take steps further closer to what we want to do, even if it's some time on the side to start with and then transitioning your way across? Is there anything you'd add there in terms of someone who is maybe hearing this but feeling a bit stuck?
I think really it's all about just finding something that lights you up inside. It doesn't have to be something athletic. It doesn't have to, it's just something that outside of work that you like to do, some sort of passion, because I think people just get so caught up in the mundane activities of their lives of, take the trash out, got to do this, got to do that, all my duties, all my responsibilities. Oh, must be nice. Some people have to work, and you start making up these excuses. And then it's like, by the time you just kind of get stuck into this loop of, is it Friday yet? And then the weekend is almost just like a breather for you to be like, try to like let loose and blow off some steam and relax a little bit. And then it's like, oh, here we go, Monday morning, and then you just create this loop of repetitive, nature. And I think a lot of people over the last 2 years during the pandemic, I think there has been a silver lining of people waking up and realizing like life is short. Like, it sounds like a cliche, but like people are realizing like my freedom and things I like to do, you can't put a price tag on, and I'm going to prioritize doing stuff now and like living my life and seeking out different sites and, different activities. And I've know a lot of people that have gotten into running throughout this pandemic. And into nature and realizing that their connection to nature is so important for their overall health.
Yeah, absolutely. I want to dive into that in terms of, instilling that from a young age in a little bit. But before we go into that, I would love to just go a little bit deeper with you if you're comfortable with that in terms of, we've mentioned your sobriety. You said 2004. And I would like to hear, firstly, what did running give you during that recovery process? But also, is there any ways that running became almost like a replacement, like a numbing tool for you that maybe in some ways hindered your growth? Or, I'd love to hear your thoughts there.
Not at all. I think a lot of people probably try to categorize that or put me in that box of like, oh, he stopped drinking and using drugs and now he's addicted to running. Done. That's nice and neat. And I can put that into a box, and that explains what happened with that guy. But it's definitely a lot more to it than that. I started running because I had enough of an athletic background to know that I was trying to stop smoking cigarettes. When I was about 5 months sober, I was still smoking cigarettes, and I knew that if I maybe added something in cardio based, that maybe would help me fight the urge to smoke cigarettes. And it worked. But I also found that like by running and getting into this kind of rhythmic, meditative activity, especially running through the forest, really helped me to get centered, call it whatever you want, align your chakras, process things. I mean, whatever you want to call it, there's something that I feel is deeply embedded in our genome as human beings that you kind of hit the reset button and you're able to work through. So it's not like I'm doing these races to like escape and to numb things out. I'm actually using this activity and this meditative, moving meditation, if you will, to like process my life and work through things that have ideas. I mean, the majority of the ideas I've had for my business have been on the trail while I'm running.
Yep.
So, and it's a way to see places on foot that you would not normally experience. It's a way to connect with others, to create a fellowship, which I've been able to do. As soon as I moved to Portland in 2009, I felt like I already had a built-in community through the recovery community and through the running community. And I instantly had all of these like-minded people around me to support me and for me to support them, for us to support each other. That's that's the beautiful thing about the fellowship of running and of recovery is that it's not about me, it's about we.
So true. When you said there about it being a meditative process and, recognizing that it just centered you, were you aware of those thoughts in those early days? I'm assuming that was when you started running for the first time. You didn't have a running background before that. So did you understand, could you conceptualize that at the time, or were you just, at the time, just in those moments you felt good and then you recognized other moments, were tough?
Well, I actually, before I started running, I actually had dabbled in yoga a bit. And that's how I actually met my wife, as she was leading these yoga classes. And it's so funny. She like looks back on those early days and she liked me, but she's like, ew, he smokes. But yeah, I started going to their yoga classes and I started to feel some of those. Just like, wow, I feel really good after I do this. And it's not about how flexible I am, but it's about me just like connecting with my breathing, my body, doing my best. And then as I transitioned to running, it was very similar. It was like my breathing, my body, and me able to connect with myself. And it was just very therapeutic. It continues to be very therapeutic for me on a regular basis. And it doesn't feel like a chore for me. I don't feel like I get too overly competitive with it. I've always tried to balance out my running with like adventure runs that are self-organized and actual sanctioned competitions. And, the older I've gotten now, I'm not as, just laser focused on these races. So it's more, like I said, giving back to the community more and doing a couple big races every year that I really zero in on. But it's just I'm very grateful that I've found this outlet, because it's created this life for me over the last 17 years that I truly never would have imagined. I mean, it's it's been the best show on earth, between, getting sober and finding this community and this sport. It's been very good for me.
Yeah. You mentioned their gratitude, and I remember reading that you said so much of recovery is about gratitude. So what did recovery teach you about gratitude, and how does that help you in tough moments in your own running, or non-tough moments if you want?
Totally. Getting sober involved me getting to a the lowest point, the lowest of the low that you can imagine, where you feel like, you're in a sand pit, right? And the walls are very high, and every time you try to dig out, just more sand keeps coming in. So I was at that low point, and I was tossed a rope, and by pulling myself up meant that I had to basically rip out all the wiring in my mind and rewire everything, because my old ways weren't working, and my old ways were very toxic. And it was about my thinking. And in recovery, they teach you about what you think affects how you feel.
Yes.
So, early on, I learned about this story about the two wolves, which is a Native American story, where it's a Cherokee legend where an elder is talking to a child, and the elder is telling the child that every person inside of them has two wolves that are in constant opposition of each other every day. One is the good wolf, which represents, kindness and positivity and love. The other is the bad wolf, which represents, negativity, resentment, anger. And the young child asks, well, which one wins? And the elder simply states, the one that you feed. So every day you feed that wolf. Whatever wolf you feed is going to get stronger, right? And so we always say with our business, part of why we named our business Wy'east Wolfpack is because of that story of feed the good wolf. And not only in life, but in endurance sports too. I mean, you're out there and, oh, my feet hurt. Oh God, why did I sign up for this? This is too long of a race. The whole time you're thinking those thoughts, you're feeding the bad wolf. And next thing you know, you're dropping out at mile 20. But on the contrary, oh man, look at these volunteers. They're great. Look at where I'm running. I'm so grateful I have the ability to run. My family's waiting for me at the finish line. You're feeding the good wolf. And those, that goes a long way in life, and it goes a long way in endurance sports. And I'm not Mr. Positivity all the time. I definitely go through those dark places, but I recognize when I'm there, and I'm able to work through them because I've gotten through them in life, and vice versa. When I'm in those 100-mile races that seem agonizing and I've gotten through those, then when I'm in life going through low points, I remember, they help each other.
Thank you to InsideTracker for sponsoring this episode of the Running for Real podcast. I have been working with InsideTracker since about 2017. I have taken many tests, and I love that I can continue to track how my biomarkers are doing. I can see them at a glance. I can see them in detail. I can see what things need improvement, what things are at risk, and what are optimized. I can see that my inner age is 25, which as a 33-year-old, I know I'm not old, but as someone who's 33, having an inner age of 22 is pretty awesome. I love that I can select a goal. For me, I've actually picked overall health, but you could pick injury prevention, you could pick and recovery, you could pick stress, you could pick performance, whatever it is for you. They give you actionable things, easy things that you can do and follow along each day. For me, one of my recent ones was to stop taking my iron tablet as I was taking too much. And so that was a great reminder to me that I was overdoing it, and I could get myself feeling better by reducing my amount. And I have been feeling better since I've been doing that. They give you featured recipes that work with the things that they are recommending to you to optimize your levels. You can see some articles, you can see lots of science and videos if that is what you're interested in. And I love that it is just all in one easy place. Now, my friends, as a friend of Running for Real, you get 25% off. You won't see that offer in other places. 25% off by going to InsideTracker.com/Tina. That is a special offer just for you, my friends. So go to InsideTracker.com/Tina to go check it out and sign yourself up. So related to that, you said about through the tough moments, is that thinking, reminding us yourself about the good wolf, is that how you decide where the line is between pushing yourself too hard and, you know, finding something extremely difficult and going too far? But, you know, if you're able to turn your thinking around, if you're able to find some good in that moment, you are probably in a place where you're okay. Like you're known for doing some of the toughest races out there, being very successful in those moments. How do you know where that line is for you? Or is there a line?
That's a good point. That's the question. Because we're in a sport where you're basically overriding every signal that your body's telling you to stop, right? Mm-hmm, so that's kind of the fun of it. It's just like, it's almost like, okay, I'm getting some signals from my body that things are not going well. There's a self-preservation mechanism in our brains as humans called the central governor. Mm-hmm. And that basically tells you, like, slow down, get some food, relax, sit down. But they found, endurance athletes are just able to override, almost to the point of severely hurting themselves sometimes. So I've actually have put myself in a couple situations where, all right, this is dangerous. I'm in
and you recognize that?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. I'm in Death Valley. I'm 127 degrees Fahrenheit. Coffee colored pee. Irregular heartbeats. Stuff's not going well here. There's a reason they call it Death Valley. And so, for instance, that was one particular race that I pulled the plug on because no race is that important for you to die at or to create.
Talk us through that thinking when this was happening, because, and I'm not in the ultra world. I was in the marathoning world, but I'm very much trying to override my systems that I learned for the 14 years I was a professional runner, mm-hmm. Well, a high level athlete, I should say. I don't want to say I was a professional athlete at 14. But I'm trying to override those that You don't quit. You do not quit. So you must have had some elements of that. So talk us through what was going on in that moment, and how you were able to say okay, I got it. I got to pull it.
Well, for that particular race, it was called the Badwater 135 miler So I promised my loved ones before I went down there that I wasn't going to put myself in, harm's way and mm-hmm. damage myself. So I wanted to honor my promise. But at the same time, when I was having those moments, for a while, I was like, I'm not feeling good. And, I peed dark but I was able to get, this is kind of gross, but, endurance athletes monitor their urine color, right? For mm-hmm. make sure your kidneys are working properly. And so I was able to get my urine back to normal color, and then it came back again. And, you're messing with your major organs and, potential like rhabdo or kidney failure.
Yeah.
And so that was happening in conjunction with some other things. And so in my mind, the extreme nature of the sport in the competitive aspect of myself, I'm like, I got to keep going. I just got to go take a break in the van for a little bit. So go sit in the air conditioning. I'm going to be okay. Sleep for like 5 or 10 minutes, wake up, drink some more Coke or, and I'm thinking something doesn't feel right. My body, something is in that. And that I think is the thing of, as a runner, as somebody that has done this consistently year in and year out with taking care of myself, right? Taking care of my body at a very high level. You get to, and I'm sure you know this from your running career, is that you get to know every nook and cranny in your body, right?
Yeah.
You get to know what's that? What is that little thing? What's that little feeling I'm getting in my hip? What's that in my knee, right? But you also, your body so well that you know when something's not going well and something's not right. And so things progressively got worse in that particular situation in Death Valley, to the point where I almost felt like my engine was revving high, almost like short circuiting a little bit. My like I said, when you start feeling weird heart rhythms and you start messing with your organs, that's where I kind of draw the line.
Yeah. Well, I mean, it's hard. I'd imagine ultra athletes out there listening can relate to this. And I have had a one marathon and one 10K in particular that I believe I went too far. And for me, I wasn't able to push. I've talked about this before. I wasn't able to push myself for quite a few months after each of those experiences. Like I felt like my body was like, we're cutting you off at 80%. Did you have any of those experiences after that, in terms of your body was like trying to protect you?
I think, subconsciously, I always want to be able to continue this because it's more than just, it's more than just this competitive nature, right? It's such a therapeutic outlet for me. So I don't want to risk me not being able to have this passion, to be able to have this activity anymore. So I think subconsciously there's that in my mind. Like I'm pushing the envelope right now, but I don't want to go over this line where I'm not, able to potentially run anymore.
Yeah.
There's definitely such thing as, I definitely know a lot of runners that I used to race with that have disappeared because they can no longer run based on, overtraining syndrome or things of that.
Tough to find the line. Thank you for sharing that with us, and just providing some insight into it being okay to pull the plug, and you don't have to go to the extreme that you did. But I think the more we can talk about taking the right step for your body, the better. I'm always encouraging us to listen to our bodies, and that's a good example of that. I'd like to go back in time towards your childhood. I've seen you share that you had a love and appreciation for the outdoors instilled in you at a young age. Why do you feel like that was an important piece of your childhood that, ties into what you do now and how you feel about being, connected to the earth now?
Totally. Well, I grew up with a single mother in a city in Pennsylvania where we didn't have a lot of nature around us. And so I ended up moving to a smaller town in Pennsylvania when I was going into like the 6th grade. And at that point, at that point is where my mom had started to take us camping on camping trips. And that's, when, like I said, she started instilling this love and appreciation for the outdoors. And we used to have this guy, his name was Bob Miller. He was our soccer coach, and he used to always take us out on these vans. Like he would take all of us in a big van, and we would go all the way out on these like trips, and we would go. And that was the first time I think I ever ran on the trails. We would go to these gorges and stuff like that. And it was so fun, and it was just out of our element. So between the Bob Miller trips and between my mom taking us on camping trips, I I didn't know it at the time, but as I look back on life, I feel like that was instilled in me. And I always, say like, I want to pay that forward to the next generation. And that's part of why I started doing these youth programs through my business and these trail running camps, after school programs, et cetera. And I tell the kids, like, you don't need to be an ultra marathon runner. You don't need to be a runner at all, but you need to take the time to get outside and get into nature as a regular part of your life. Mm-hmm. And stop, right? That's it.
And stop.
I mean, full stop. That's period. That's it. It doesn't have to be complicated. It literally can mean going out to the park in your neighborhood, walking around, taking your dog for a walk, going to the beach, connecting with nature. It doesn't have to be so extreme, like running 100 miles or,
Yes, so true. Actually, before we started recording, so we had a lot of snow that's just melted in the last few days, just in time for us to get some more in a few days. And the ground is really wet. And I took my 1-year-old outside just to walk around because it's warm out today, to go walk around and just feeling like the squelching of the grass under her feet. And even that, just like talking to her about that, what that was, and she was quite enjoying herself, just feeling like squelching. Yeah. There was that part of me that was like, oh, I should put on her shoes. But then I thought, you know what? Like, it's warm enough. Like, let's just let her feel that feeling of not only the grass, but like the water coming up as well. So yeah, I try to do little things like that as often as I can, or even, just getting outside to explore. But as the mother of young kids, it sounds easy, and it is still easy for me with my 1-year-old, but the 4-year-old is now starting to resist. And I'm sure there's a period between pretty much 4 and maybe Farah's still in that stage, probably not. But how do you literally go about that? Is it, I've signed my daughter up for a nature camp in the summer, so I'm hoping that's going to help. But like, how do you go about that logistically when it's not as easy as it sounds to get children outside?
No, and definitely with some kids, it is a lot easier than others. I mean, we all have our own personalities. My daughter was at her first 50K race when she was like 6 weeks old, and she's grown up, having people like come into her little stroller. Are you going to be a runner too? But speaking of that stroller, I started very early running with her in the baby jogger. And there have been many times where I've had to get crafty, so I would create games. Like, it wasn't about like, we're going to go for a run now. Like, we're going to go, let's get some bread and let's go feed the birds. And so I would get some bread, put it in the stroller, and we're now going to go look for the birds to feed. And, I'm sneakily getting in, a 5-mile run, and we're looking for the birds.
Oh, those birds flew away. Oh, those birds flew away. Let's fast forward.
Exactly. But at the same time, she was so just like mesmerized by all of the, everything coming at her and being outside that oftentimes she forgot about what we were doing. And then I'd be like, oh, here's a bunch of seagulls, or here's a bunch of birds. And then we would have this experience of just being outdoors. And, I've been very lucky. The amount of times that she's had meltdowns about going out into nature I could probably count on one hand. So I've just been very fortunate in that regard. But I know a lot of people have asked me about that. How do you get the kids to put down their iPads or their video games and to get outside? And it's definitely, it can be tricky. And that's why, if you're listening and you're in Portland, you should sign your kid up for our after school program, because we have fun. We make it fun. We call it Move with the Pack. And I think in general, just trying to get crafty and try different things. So I didn't like running when I was a kid. Like, I played sports, but I didn't like just running. So we play games. We play cooperative games. We sometimes we do hikes or do runs, but we'll frame it differently. We do like a stair challenge, or we do, something for them to wrap their head around, and something different. And not everybody likes it all the time. And I have that talk with them too. It's like, yeah, there's 12 kids here, which I'm actually going to this afternoon. You think every single person's going to like every single thing that we do? No, there's sometimes you're not going to like what we're doing, but you have to suck it up for the team. And then there's going to be other times that you're going to really love the activity that we're doing, and other people aren't going to like it, but that's life. That's, you have to,
That's so true. No, thank you. That's helpful. And yeah, if I wish I was lucky enough to live in the Portland area to be able to send my daughter to that. Actually, I will add, for anyone, for my 4-year-old, it's not even so much about the we don't have iPads. They don't use my phone, but it's more that she doesn't like getting dirty. She's not a messy child. And so I found in England, a lot of kids have these I can't remember the rain suits, I think they're called. And it's like this suit that goes, it's kind of like a snow suit, but it's just not as marshmallowy in that it's not as bulky, but it's just like a suit that they zip up that goes all head to toe, and it's waterproof. And so they just don't get messy. And so I've actually found that's been pretty helpful. So nice. I just wanted to mention that for anyone else who's struggling with that, because I have found that like a lifesaver.
Totally. Where do you live now?
St. Louis.
Oh, St. Louis. Okay. Well, our climate here in Portland is probably very similar to England. Yeah. Where there's a lot of wet and cold. Yeah. So I think, a lot of Portland kids are just like used to
have to get outside. Yeah.
Because it's so dark and rainy here so much of the time that if you're going to not go outside when it's raining, then you're not going to.
Yeah. That is very much the same as England. My sister just packs her kids into the car and get or just heads them outside, just get them to a park or something. But I appreciate that.
Going back to the baby, the young baby though too, it's like I do remember when my daughter was a baby, and there were times where she would like inconsolably be crying, right? And as a parent, you don't know what's wrong with this baby, right? Mm-hmm. So oftentimes I would like walk outside with her under the trees. Yeah. And, all of a sudden she'd start looking up at the trees and stop
when
crying.
they're newborn.
And I just always thought like how profound that is, because humans, when we go out into the woods, into the forest, we feel better.
Yeah, that sigh of relief.
Yes. Yeah. And you look up at the trees. Wow. I forgot what I was stressing out about. Yeah. You know what I mean?
True. And that is so true with newborns. I remember that clearly with both of mine as well. Yeah. Really? It's something special about that. Yeah. I definitely think that plays a role. Thank you so much for sharing that. Okay, as we start to wrap up here, you mentioned about the Wy'east Wolfpack. Tell people a little bit more about what that is. And you've mentioned about the after-school programs, but beyond that for adults.
Totally, yeah. So, when I mentioned the aid stations that we do and all the time we put in, a lot of the times we are coaching a lot of those runners too. So we basically coach and design training plans for folks that have these aspirations to do all different races of many different distances, road and trail. So we do personal training, coaching. We also do like corporate wellness. So we provide like fitness classes for corporations for folks to take a break from their workday, get away from.
That's what my undergrad is in.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Nice.
I've never used it, but that's what my undergrad is.
Awesome. Right on. Yeah.
Yeah. Anyway, keep going.
Yeah. So we have like trainers and yoga instructors that will lead classes for folks to take a break throughout their workday. And we also do kind of like camps that I mentioned, and the after school programs for kids, youth programs, and some retreats. And so we've got kind of our hands in a lot of different things, which has been
awesome.
Yeah.
I'll put links in the show notes for people to go check that out for sure. Wrapping up, final thing I want to ask you here. You've mentioned you've been through some tough times. You've been through some really tough races and come out the other side. Over the past year, this has been a very difficult time. And at times it's been dark for all of us. What would you like to remind the listeners for anyone who is in a tough spot right now, just based on what you've learned throughout your own journey that, you want to remind them?
Yeah, I think probably one of the biggest things is, or I guess one of the worst things you can do is just like isolate and think that you're the only person going through this. And I think over the last, 5 to 7 years, as I've become more of an open book about my past, and as I shared my story, I've realized that when I've made myself vulnerable and shared my struggles and my past, it kind of humanizes me. I think a lot of people just like thought that, oh, he's just a good runner. He was probably a college athlete and a very good high school athlete and right? But when they find out like, oh no, like you went through some dark times and you went through some struggles, I've been through that, or I'm going through that. So for me to make these revolutionary changes in my life, it took a lot of ego deflation, and for me to reach out for help and relating with other people. And then that sort of humility of having that humility to reach out to other people and realize that there are pockets of people out there that are dealing with what you're dealing with or worse, and they've recovered and changed their life. You realize you're not alone, and that there are support groups out there. There are just networks of people to, like I said earlier in the interview, it's not about me, it's about we. And it's so much easier to work together and through some rough times rather than trying to be by yourself up here in your head.
Mm-hmm. Beautifully said. Thank you so much. Yes. That was a really powerful and an important message, one that we work hard on instilling here as well, just that connection, how important it is to not be alone. That was actually the impetus behind this podcast, was making sure people didn't feel alone. So thank you so much for wrapping up with that. And where can people go find you if they want to follow along in future? I will put a link to Wy'east Wolfpack in the show notes, but if they want to follow you anywhere else, where would you send them?
It's just my first last name, Yassine Diboun.
Okay.
Yeah.
On everything?
On everything.
Okay, great.
And
all right.
I just wanted to thank you so much for, the intention of having this podcast and to spread it around, because, somebody might hear this or another one of your podcasts, and it might spark something inside of them that changes their lives. But if you're just keeping it to yourself,
No, thank you.
Yeah. So thank you.
That means a lot. Thank you. I really appreciate that. Hi, friends. Just a quick message to say a big thank you to the Running for Real team. While I may be the face of Running for Real and the voice behind the podcast, there are a group of people who are working tirelessly to provide everything that runners could need within our community to make our community stronger, better, and evolve and grow and learn from one another. We are working really hard to make Running for Real the place we believe it can be within our community. I just want to take a moment to thank everyone on our team. That is Victoria, Stacy, Sandy, Sally, Maria, Kelsey, Kat, Jeremy, and Erica. I appreciate each and every one of you and the hard work that you put in. Now let's get back to the show. Really enjoyed that conversation with Yassine. What a fantastic guy. I'd heard a lot about that from the running community, how inspiring he is, how fun he is, how genuine he is. And actually, I'm hoping I get to meet him later this year when I happen to be going to visit family near where he lives. So fingers crossed I'll be able to see him in person. But I hope you got to enjoy that episode. And I feel like there was a lot of good nuggets of wisdom in there that we can all take and apply to our own running lives. And if you do decide to take some of his fun ideas to volunteering near you, please let me know. I would love to hear. You can find links to everything we talked about today in the show notes by going to runningforreal.com/episode 289. And I also want to take a moment to thank our sponsors. Thank you to Tracksmith for loyally and just encouragingly always being there for Running for Real and the running community. You can give 5% of your order to Runners for Public Lands as a donation when you use code TINA15 at checkout. Thank you so much for those of you who have decided to use that. It really was important to me not to have a coupon code that was just money off when we could be giving back to a nonprofit that is doing some amazing work. So thank you to Tracksmith for switching your codes over to that. And also to InsideTracker. You can get 25% off your InsideTracker, any of the plans on the website to take a look at what is going on with your health on the inside. And you can go to InsideTracker.com/Tina to go check that out. Make sure you go find Yassine across all of the social media channels. He is a wonderful person to follow, will leave you feeling good. And my friends, thank you so much for listening. I will have a together run for you on Monday, and I'll see you next Friday.